usually, like I said, not necessarily at all where you're looking, because back to the hardest business to run is when it's
Mhm.
running successfully, but it feels wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's like nothing, you're looking around, it's like
Mhm.
nothing is broken. There is no water leaks. There are no giant cracks.
Right.
You keep looking around and saying, gosh, there's nothing wrong here. But yet it feels heavy. It feels hard. I don't have energy. I don't, have any. That's the hardest thing to diagnose, because back to there's not actually a lot of symptoms that are running around.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tanya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. Most business problems, unfortunately, do not start where they show up. They show up in your marketing, often. They definitely will show up in your sales. They likely will show up in your team. And so that's where you try to fix them, right? Hire somebody new, sell more, switch to Substack. Ha ha ha. I'm gonna ride that train as long as I can. So that is where you try to fix them. But what if the real issue isn't in any of those places? What if the reason things still feel harder than they should is because you're solving the entirely wrong problem? If you're listening right now and you have ever thought, I've already tried fixing this, why is it still happening? This episode is going to change how you look at your business, because today, Gwen and I are going to be talking about misdiagnosis and why it's the reason that smart, capable founders stay stuck way longer than they need to. Now, Gwen, let's start here. Most of the time when something isn't working in the business, it looks so obvious. And we've experienced this ourselves, right? Leads are down. Must be marketing. Sales are sluggish. Must be messaging. So why is that not actually where you start to solve the problem?
Well, I won't say it's not where you start, but it's probably not where the problem is at, where the problem is starting.
All right. Keep going.
Right? Because part of what you first want to see is, where are the obvious places that you're having a problem?
Mm-hmm. Fair.
Right? So I'm not saying it's not where you start, because you are going to start there. But you have to look at bigger pictures. Because sometimes where the problem is where the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times it's not where the problem is. The problem is being generated from another piece of the business. And often that piece of the business is so fundamentally disconnected with this very specific symptom
Mm-hmm.
that we don't actually realize that's part of the problem, right? And if we solve this more, what I like to call a root cause problem,
Yeah.
then it won't necessarily take care of all the symptoms. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just takes care of those symptoms. But other times what it will do is make those symptoms actually get clearer about what we're actually trying to solve in those symptoms.
Okay.
Or
So
it can become easier. So a really simple example
mm-hmm.
that just kind of came to me fairly recently, quite honestly, is a lot of times we're trying to solve a systems problem
Mm-hmm.
when what we actually have is a people problem.
Okay. All right. So let's pause there for a second, because what I want to make sure we clarify early on for our listener, because it's distracting if they don't get this part, is if you could clarify symptom versus source, or as you said, root cause, like clarify those for us. And then I want you to expand on this example because it's a good one.
It is a good one. So symptom is always the issue that's manifesting that is most prevalent. Okay? So cash flow is a great symptom. Like, I can't pay my bills. Okay? We almost always assume that because I can't pay my bills is because I don't have enough in sales.
Right. I'm not bringing in enough money.
I'm not bringing enough money, because if I had more money, then I'd have more
Mhm.
money in my bank account and I'd be able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Obviously. Now, that could be true. I'm not saying that that's not ever true,
Mhm.
because that absolutely positively could be true. But what we may not be realizing is cash flow is not about how much money we're bringing in, but maybe the timing that the cash is arriving,
Right. It's
right?
when the money comes in compared to when the money needs to go out.
When it needs to go out, right? So it could be a timing issue, which actually doesn't have anything to do necessarily with sales.
Mhm.
Now, it might. Back to maybe what we realize, it's like, oh, it's a timing issue. It's not that we need to sell more. We need to change our terms so we get paid sooner,
Right.
right? But what we thought was, oh, well, if we just sell, $10,000 more, then we're going to be fine.
Mhm.
But all that means is that $10,000 is still coming in too late.
Right.
if it's a timing issue, right?
Mhm.
So more in that case doesn't actually fix the issue, right?
Mhm.
It may be our cash flow issue is because we're actually paying our subcontractors more than what we can afford. So what's being left over isn't enough for us to pay all of the rest of the bills.
Mm.
So what we actually have is a pricing issue,
Or not understanding cost of goods sold.
or not understanding cost of goods sold,
Right.
right?
I
So
mean, it's still a pricing issue, right? But the pricing issue comes from not understanding cost of
yeah,
goods sold in
right?
that case.
So
Yeah.
selling more just means that we're gonna be more in the hole,
Right.
okay? It may be that we're leaking money in our expenses that will
Mhm.
continue to leak, and often when we get bigger, those leaks just become bigger holes,
Right.
right? So more money doesn't actually fix that either, right? Sometimes, but I'm gonna just stay with this example because it works really well in lots of places. But maybe it does fix it temporarily, and so we think we've solved it,
Right, because
right?
if your cash flow issue is timing and you increase sales $10,000 and that $10,000 all comes in on one day, it may fix that issue without solving the timing problem.
Without actually solving the problem, because it'll rear its head again and again, right?
Mhm.
But the
Right.
cash flow issue actually could be you're paying people who aren't doing work effectively or efficiently, or are no longer really capable of the role that you need because you've grown the business and things have changed, and
Mhm.
all of those places. And so it may actually be a people issue, which we don't actually ever think of cash flow being a people issue,
Okay. Right. So, what
right?
does it
So,
look
so
like
all of
when
these things are, there's a lot of places that this could possibly land, but it
Mhm.
looks like, so symptom is can't pay my bills. Root cause could be any of these other things.
Right. So, would you say, because I want to get back to the people issue big time, but
Yeah,
would you say that problems present downstream, but they originate upstream? Is that accurate?
most of the time. Most of the time that's true. Where you actually know you're missing the root cause is if a similar issue keeps reappearing. We think we fix it, and it comes back up again. We do something, we fix it, and it comes back up again. And we do something, we fix it, and it comes back up again. Right? That's typically where we're fixing symptoms and we're not actually addressing root cause. If it keeps rearing its head, then and I'm not saying like instantly. It doesn't have to be instant, right? But it's like, yeah, at the beginning of the quarter we had a cash flow issue, but by the end of the quarter we were nailing it. And then soon after we got into the next quarter, we seemed to be having a cash flow issue again. But by the end of the quarter, we had it fixed, right? That's saying, okay, you're fixing a symptom, but you're not actually figuring out what that root cause is.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that, the visible problem feels real. It's tangible.
Oh, it is real.
Right.
I mean, not that it feels real. It is. It's freaking real.
So you've got a visible problem. It's a real problem. It's tangible, but it's often just the output of something happening elsewhere.
It is. It is. And, I mean, using an example that people will use a lot, it's like, oh, you've got this, a scar on your, on your arm, and it's festering. And it's like, oh, we do the thing that we need to do, and it clears up, and we're like, oh yeah, good, okay, everything's good. And then all of a sudden, it starts reactivating again. Well, in our world, we would immediately say, oh, it's infected deeper than we think it is. Right? That's really what this is. It's that same thing. It's like most people, if they kept having something reappear on their body that was dangerous, wouldn't say, oh, I'll just keep putting a Band-Aid over it and put some Neosporin on it and it'll be fine. And then it's like, oh, gosh, it came back in another, in another 2 months. Oh, it came back in another 2. Like at some point you'd be like, I think I've got a bigger problem here.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Are we dealing with issues that are the same or very similar again and again and again and again and again? And like I said, not necessarily super, super fast on top of each other. It may only come up once a year, but gosh, it does seem to come up almost every year that we have to start readdressing that issue again.
Yeah. So this is the part that I think is so frustrating because, especially for, I'll put myself squarely here. I'm smart, Gwen. Like, and I don't just say that, right? Like, I have intelligence.
Yeah.
I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm smart. I work hard. And I don't ignore problems. I don't think most people who listen to this podcast, most women, ignore problems, right?
They don't.
We are action takers. We are women of action.
Absolutely. 100%.
So we're hiring. We're shifting our strategy when we need to. We're changing our tactics. We're paying attention to the trends and what's current in the market. And we're reading our reports. And the problem keeps coming back over and over again. And then we start to feel dumb because even though we're smart, we're like, I don't know, are we smart? So what does it actually mean when the problem keeps repeating? I mean, I think what you've said is it means that we're not looking in the right place. But like, what do we do? What's the next step?
Yeah. So usually the problem, the reason you're not finding it is back to it's often so far disconnected, it doesn't make sense like that could be the problem. Right? It also comes down to I'm working on a new framework to actually, that's going to be kind of a diagnostic to help people.
Yeah.
Because this is what I do naturally.
Oh, wait, pause, because what you just said is ding, ding, ding in my head, because personally for me, when I keep trying to solve this problem and it just keeps bubbling up, and I am somebody, like I have struggled with cash flow, right? Because of the type of clients I have, right? I have that timing problem. And you feel dumb. But what you're saying is when the problem keeps coming up again and again, it's not that I'm dumb. It's not that I'm missing something, that I'm not working hard enough or any of that, or even that my strategy's off. It's that I've misdiagnosed my problem.
Right.
Huh. Okay, keep going. Sorry. I just, light bulb moment, real life.
No, love that. Totally love that. It's the idea that you are stuck and not looking at, and typically this is because these are the areas that don't necessarily, aren't necessarily obvious. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently working with pond as my as my abbreviation.
Pond. All right,
POND.
the marketer in me is going to have a conversation with you about that offline, but go ahead. Go with pond for me here.
Well, it's better than dope.
Fair. Fair. Better than dope. Don't be a dope. Although we could have fun with that. Anyway, go on.
We
Go on,
might be
pond.
able, so we made it. We might end up there. But what it really is we've got patterns that are so ingrained that we're not seeing them.
Okay.
Okay.
Patterns.
We have operations that we were just talking about in the previous episode that we have been conditioned to believe that we should understand operations because every business has them. And so therefore it must be intuitive. And if I'm, and whatever I'm doing is operations and that must be adequate,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't necessarily true. Right. There's a lot of things that go into that. And very few people will look at your operations as a whole. Right.
Right.
You'll bring in an HR person, you'll bring in a finance person,
Mm-hmm.
and they're each looking at pieces of your operations, but they aren't
Mm-hmm.
looking at how all of those pieces interact with one another. So when I'm talking about operations, I'm really talking about how do all of those elements actually play with one another on any given day,
Okay.
right? There's the numbers piece. And depending on who you are as a business person, you may or may not really like your numbers. You may not, and I don't mean like, oh, they aren't as good as I want them to be. It's like, I don't
Mm.
actually, that's not fun for me. Like you've
I
talked
love my
about that for
numbers.
you, numbers,
No.
not
I don't well, I didn't used to, right? That's
right.
for
You didn't
sure.
used to.
But now I love them.
Now that you have someone who's working with you in a really great way, you do. But
Mm-hmm.
but you, yeah, I'll say the former you, I think is way more common
Mm-hmm.
than the current you. That it's like, no, I actually get them, I understand them, it makes sense to me. And so we look at the numbers and we pay attention to them, but we don't necessarily dig into them or understand what it might be telling us.
Right. So
Right.
when you're saying numbers, because see, when I hear numbers, I'm always thinking analytics because that's the space I live in. But when you're saying numbers, you're meaning finance.
I'm saying all the numbers. So what
Okay.
are the analytics saying as well as
The
the
finance
the
piece.
finances
Got it. Okay.
as well as the, the turn and the churn and, and
I
your
like some of my
KPIs.
numbers then.
Yeah, right. And but that's the thing is most of us don't like
Mhm.
looking at all of the numbers,
Right. Right. Okay.
right?
Fair.
Right? And then the last piece is what we're using the term direction, which is more about the strategic direction. Does it actually align with what you're trying to do or what you want to do? A lot of times we call it alignment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a place where we'll often get some very weird friction
Mm-hmm.
that we don't realize that it's creating for us,
Mm.
right? We were talking about this in the last episode. I was told I wanted to grow, and the best way to do that was to build an agency, but I actually didn't want to manage people.
Right.
Right. I mean, that isn't what you said, but that would be an example of
Mm-hmm.
it, right? So that's actually a place where you're getting some directional friction,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
In the diagnostic that things are not aligning, and because they're not aligning, that strategic direction isn't really fully aligned. You may know where
Mm.
you're going strategically, but it's not really aligned with who you are and what you're really wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Then that can also be part of the diagnostic. But that's a lot of things to look at, and a lot of those, if you are looking at them yourself, you're still stuck in your own knowledge and your own assumptions.
Right.
And that's where it becomes a problem. So let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had a client, super successful could
Mhm.
sell ice to Eskimos at a
Mhm.
premium, right?
For $5 a cube.
Yeah, exactly. Like, totally could sell ice to Eskimos at a premium. I mean, like
Mhm.
this person sales was not this person's issue,
Mhm.
but there was a cash flow issue.
Mhm.
And the cash flow issue was related to how payments were coming in from
Mhm.
clients.
Timing.
And one of the things I started asking way, way early, but it took literally years before she was able to hear and process
Mhm.
was, you can't be working this way because cash flow is going to become a problem over time. And it did several different times.
Mhm.
Cash flow was a problem. And but part of the thing that I kept trying to push back on, but this was a really strong pattern, was
Mhm.
we don't do that in this industry.
Right.
There's only one way to do that in this industry.
Mhm.
Now, over time, she started trying different things
Mhm.
and realized that it's like, oh, no, it doesn't always have to be that way.
Right.
Right. But this is the thing. If someone like myself hadn't come in, I'm not sure if she would have ever tried any of the other options because the assumptions and the patterns were so well established.
Mhm.
And one of our other advisors, who's an amazing advisor, also came out of the same industry.
Mhm.
And because she came out of the same industry, she would never question that either because that's the way
Right.
it's always been done,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So that's part of what this diagnostic is that you usually need someone to help diagnose. And like I said, I don't necessarily lay it out of like, we're first going to do this and then we're going to do this and then we're going to do this. But this is what I'm doing
Mhm.
in my early on conversations, is asking enough questions to say where are the patterns, where is there potentially operations issues, where are the numbers not lining up the way they need to, and where is the strategic direction in conflict with the the internal alignment that they're actually trying to create.
Okay. So then that brings you to a place where you can accurately diagnose the problem.
Exactly.
So, what changes when you actually identify the right problem to solve?
So it allows us to change our focus. Now, sometimes what we realize is like, oh, but before we can fix the root cause, we
Mhm.
do have to fix these two other things first
Okay.
because they're on the way to the root cause. And if we try to fix the root cause without fixing them, it's just going to break again.
Got it. So that
Right?
clarity unlocks, like, the order of operations,
The
to
order.
use old school math terms here.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. What needs to be done first. I had another client who was fundamentally was struggling with her own motivation in her business. That,
Mhm.
that really would be probably how she would have described it. It's like, I've done really well and I actually like what I do, but I feel like I'm not, doing what I need to do, and I really want to make this business succeed, and what do we do on it? And early
Mhm.
on in the conversation, part of what I identified was she was assuming that her business model was different than it actually was.
Mm.
So she was in a partnership with someone else, which was, perfectly appropriate. There was
Yeah.
nothing wrong with
Nothing
that.
wrong with being in a partnership.
Nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't functioning like a partnership,
Mm.
right? It was actually functioning as two individuals that happen to share some expenses sometimes. I mean, I'm making this way more oversimplified than what, than what it was,
Right.
but but functionally, that was generally what was happening, and I was able to identify like that's a real problem.
Mhm.
Okay, because we're doing things that then are in conflict. We're running it one way but we're behaving in another, and so those two things are hitting and actually creating conflict.
Right, like going back to our recent business model episode,
Right.
you're marketing like you're a creator, but your business model is a service provider.
Yeah, exactly.
Same
So
problem.
that things were happening that were creating conflict, and what that identified to me very quickly was like, oh, so part of this I don't have energy around this is that you're creating being successful is creating ongoing conflicts.
So, would you say then thing like is that why, cuz I now like it just dawned on me who you were talking about, why things can feel so heavy even when the business is technically working? Like,
Yeah,
is that heaviness or that burden that you kind of feel, albatross hanging around your neck, is that a sign that there's some unresolved friction?
that usually
Okay.
there's some, and it's usually, like I said, not necessarily at all where you're looking, because back to the hardest business to run is when it's
Mhm.
running successfully, but it feels wrong,
Yeah.
because it's like nothing you're looking around, it's like
Mhm.
nothing is broken. There is no water leaks. There are no giant cracks.
Right.
You keep looking around and saying, gosh, there's nothing wrong here. But yet it feels heavy. It feels hard. I don't have energy. I don't, have any. That's the hardest thing to diagnose, because back to there's not actually a lot of symptoms that are running around,
Mhm. Right.
right? And so in that case, that needed to be fixed. But there also were 2 or 3 other things before that, because part of it was she needed some confidence to say, I actually need to be doing this, and I have the ability to do this work
Right.
with my partner,
Mhm.
right? And so that wasn't like we didn't just like jump on that first thing. And quite honestly, I had forgotten I had identified it. But
Mhm.
when I was talking to her quite some time later, she said, "Yeah, you identified that like within the first 2 conversations we had.
Mm.
We didn't start addressing it till almost a year later, because there was pre-work that needed to be done for it. But when we addressed it, it went super fast, it went super smooth, and the result was their business did better that year than it, like, had ever done since they've been working together. It
And I'm just gonna,
had
just
huge impact.
right, and they weren't doing more. Really, what they had done, if I recall the situation correctly, is just removed a bunch of complexity that wasn't necessary.
Yeah, and they started functioning their business model and the way that they worked and what they thought
Mhm.
they had all was in alignment. In this case, it was a directional issue.
Right.
Their strategic direction and their functional direction all got into
Mhm.
alignment. And once it was all in alignment, like you said, they weren't actually working harder. They didn't bring on, 1,000 employees or, anything of that nature.
Mhm.
Their fundamental business did not change at all, but their income and profitability went drastically different because we got
Yeah.
to the root cause.
Okay. All right. So what I have heard, and it's been, I mean, this has like been a really good episode. Like I didn't know about ponds, so that kind of threw me for a loop for a moment. But
Just worked
what?
on that like yesterday. So you haven't heard about it
Yeah.
yet.
Well, and what I've heard is, sometimes first of all, if the same problem keeps happening over and over again, like drop the mic, stop what you're doing, pull over on the side of the road, and just make a note to yourself, I'm solving the wrong problem. Like hands down. Like I've misdiagnosed my problem and I need a better diagnosis. And also what you have made me realize is how often it's not just we diagnose where the symptom arises, but we diagnose based on assumptions, right? The assumption
Mhm.
is that, I love the cash flow issue because the assumption is if cash flow is a problem, more money will solve it.
Right.
when there's a whole bunch of other reasons. I won't rehash all the reasons, right? But that's a deeply held assumption. And quite honestly, it's a very logical assumption.
It is.
Makes sense.
And sometimes it's true.
And it's true probably often enough
Yeah.
to reinforce that assumption.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But, you know, when the same problem keeps coming up time and time again, like, I think what you need to do is not just go, okay, I'm obviously misdiagnosing it. I think you need to go one of two ways, Gwen. Like, you either need to have some quiet time and like journal, like, okay, what's the problem that keeps emerging? How have I tried to solve it? Right? Asking yourself some like deep, reflective questions, or you just need to phone a friend and get some help.
Right.
And what I'm going to say is, if deeper reflection is your jam, if you don't already, need to be subscribing to Gwen's One Really Good Question, right? It is a moment of reflection. It's a CEO brain retreat, as it were, that drops in your inbox every single Friday. Spend 5, probably no more than 15 minutes thinking on it. You can journal to yourself, or you could just hit reply and send your reflection to Gwen, and she'll actually respond back to you. But if enough is enough, if you are tired of spinning in circles, tired of the same problem coming up time and time again, it's time to just phone a friend and make Gwen your friend. Go to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. You can get a 30-minute call with Gwen, not a sales call. It is actually a diagnostic. You come, share what the problem is. Gwen will ask you a few questions. And by the end of that call, you'll probably have better clarity than you have had in at least a year, but I bet it's like 5 if you've been in business that long. So we're going to see you next time, where we dig a little bit deeper into some of these problems that we are seeing coming up for founders time and time again. We'll catch you then. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tanya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.